how do I introduce Jon Kabat-Zinn? Jon is probably best known for his work creating mindfulness-based stress reduction programs. But he's a dear friend, and he's somebody who I can always count on. And he's somebody who's deeply committed to this practice of waking up. And I can't thank Jon as much as I'd like to thank Jon just for the role that he's played in both my personal life, but also in the life of our society. He's really shown up in some really remarkable ways. And Jon, I don't know how to introduce you.
Well, I've never seen you tongue-tied, Soren, so it's very touching. And I deeply appreciate this moment. And in some sense, that's the best introduction. I mean, probably many of you know, Soren and I go way, way back, and we're different generations. And there's something about our sort of non-collaboration, collaboration over all these years that's just been so effortless and so embracing of the beautiful aspects of life that it's just an honor and a privilege for me to be part of this gathering.
Wonderful. So, Jon, I'm going to go off screen and pass it over to you. And we're here behind the scenes. There will be a time to ask questions later on, but probably we'll just let you know when to do that. And deep blessings, Jon, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how wonderful to be back here together. And many of you I've seen on my screen over the past almost 2 years now, lots of familiar faces. And I really want us to take a few moments. I have 7 screens worth of people to just scan through them yourself. And just once again, I've said this many, many times, but I never get tired of it, drinking in the faces of all of us. And the fact that in whatever time zone you happen to be in, we've actually arranged this time to come together around the planet. And your motivation to do it is hugely important. Whatever that feeling is that impelled you to carve out this time to be here and to participate in all of the other various offerings that will happen in this Global Mindfulness Summit. We used to call this Mindfulness in America, but obviously on Zoom, America is an abstraction because anybody can join from anywhere. So in a certain way, America has always been an abstraction. It's always been some kind of, profound contradiction as well of an ideal of a home for everybody. And at the same time, tremendous disregard and denigration of huge swaths of humanity that we're now very much caught up in major political battles on what the history of our own country is and whether the triumphalist narrative of America being the greatest has any relationship with reality whatsoever. And of course, the answer is it has no relationship to reality, that every society, every place in this world is the greatest in a certain way. And our challenge is to understand who we are, what we are, where we're going, and what is possible, and what does mindfulness have to do with this potential for flourishing as a human species that does, in fact, know itself. Soren told this story about people coming up to the Buddha. It's an apocryphal story. Soren wasn't there, and I wasn't there either, but I used to actually have a number of slides that I would present to medical audiences that actually described, showed the Kamakura Buddha, which is like gigantic Buddha statue in Kamakura, Japan. And because mindfulness is spoken of, as Soren was saying, as the heart of Buddhist meditation. But then, of course, how do you bring Buddhism into medicine? And why would you bring Buddhism into medicine? But MBSR being the heart of Buddhist meditation. So I thought it was be useful to tell that story of, with the Kamakura Buddha on a slide, to say people used to go up to the Buddha apocryphally and say, "Are you a god? Or are you some kind of divine celestial being?" as Soren said. And he had a very, very beautiful response. "No, I'm awake." And that's what the word Buddha actually means, is to wake up. So you could say that in a very real way, even from an evolutionary point of view, that our karmic assignment on this planet as humans, as humanity, is to actually wake up while we have the chance, because a mindless engagement in life has produced so many different toxic contradictions that we actually, as a species, sometimes function as the autoimmune disease of the planet, that we're actually creating a fever for the planet that's going to influence life, and not just human life, but life for, unthinkable, periods of time to come. And of course, with Glasgow going on right at this moment, this is like right front and center. But the question is the human mind and the human propensity for othering and for greed and for, self-deluding capable of actually waking up, being more awake, especially if wakefulness is actually the core potential of our human nature, what makes us most human. So why don't we take a few moments now before we move into the rest of our time together. And we do have the luxury of an infinite amount of time that actually contracts down to 80 minutes by the clock, but there are basically an infinite number of moments within that 80 minutes, or even any 1 minute. So let's actually take a moment, and either with your eyes open or your eyes closed, just settling into being present in yourself, for yourself, and with all these, as my screen says at the moment, 395 other people from around the world, and many, many more going to watch it at some other point in time. And it always helps to ground your awareness in the body, because we're privileged to, in some sense, be embodied. I won't say have bodies, because who has your body? So we have a peculiar way of like getting seriously confused about dualisms here, or who we really are. But for now, we can, there's certainly no question that we can bring awareness to the body as a whole. It's actually its own universe. And just feel whatever's here to be felt, whatever's most predominant in the field of your awareness as you're sitting here. And let this embodied attending in this moment simply embrace the unfolding of things as they are, placing the body center stage in the field of awareness, but certainly not shutting out sounds or thoughts or emotions or anything else in the universe that might, at a certain moment, become prominent in your field of awareness. And we won't try to control anything, any of it. We'll just settle in. And befriend that wakefulness that the Buddha was referring to, which may be a passing condition, but with cultivation, with practice, with formal and informal meditation practice, actually can become more and more and more your go-to mode, what the neuroscientists would call your default mode. And so, as many of you have heard me say ad nauseum, perhaps, when we take our seats in this way, it's a radical act of sanity, a radical act of love in and of itself. And we're not trying to get anywhere else or have some special experience. We're already where we are. And we and the entire universe are complete in this moment, exactly as we are, including all the complexities, all the selfing, all the othering. But when held in awareness or wakefulness, then we don't necessarily have to go with our instinctual impulses to fight or to flee or to push or to pull. And we don't have to pull in this breath coming in. We don't have to push out this breath leaving the body. There's a certain wisdom of the body that's taking care of breathing. And in this moment, there's a certain wisdom in inhabiting the full dimensionality of our human awareness. That in some profound way is healing, transcendent, unifying in its potential. As Wordsworth put it someplace in the Preludes, unifies discordant elements and makes them move in one society, which we could call wisdom, embodied wakefulness. And since we're on a very challenging evolutionary path, maybe we do need an upgrade at this point in time to wisdom 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0. But we're it, and it's now. And so can we simply be the knowing on every level, not merely cognitive, conceptual, but be the knowing that human awareness always has been and already is. And that would include all the uncertainty and the not knowing, and the knowing of not knowing. I know it sounds a little crazy or a little too Zen or whatever, but if you just let it seep in, then we can be at home in the whole of it. Right here, right now. And when we're willing to drop in this way and inhabit the present moment in this kind of selfless way, not self-centered way, then the future is already different because we've been willing to open to this moment, to fall awake in this moment, to leave the immediate agendas and drivenness and fear and anger behind. Which opens up profound possibilities for dealing with the sources of disputes and anger and violence and delusion and greed and hatred, which are being played out on this planet in ever more terrifying ways on every level. So the silence that I'm inviting is inside and underneath all the words that I've used to, in some sense, invite us to this point. They're pointing out or pointing to something you all already knew, every single one of you, or you would not have tuned in. So if you investigate a little bit over the course of this day and tomorrow, what it is that is bringing you to tune in to this Global Mindfulness Summit. That very engagement is exactly why Soren is holding this summit. It's not about me or Soren or any of the other people that are going to be on the stage, so to speak. It's always about us. It's about all of us. And it's also about it, embodied practice. So it's living your love, your wakefulness. Are you a divine being? No, I'm awake for now. And maybe even now. And how about now? And how about living in this now? Making this our default mode. At least for now. And then in a very, very real way, meditation is not merely extended silence or stillness inwardly or outwardly. Although making space in your life for extended periods of silence and stillness is supremely important and part of the rigorous discipline of the cultivation of mindfulness across a lifespan. life itself is the real meditation practice. When our mouths are open, but also when our mouths are closed. When we're actively engaged in doing, in living, in loving, in working, in figuring out how to get together in this very strange time with other people, or reclaim some aspects of our lives that may have been lost in this ongoing pandemic, which is not yet over, and we've been baking in and losing people in for almost 2 years. And so for the next stretch of time, by my clock, I'm not going to say another word. And let's simply take up residence in awareness. I won't say our own awareness, because there's no our or my, and there's no ownership of awareness. It's insanely mysterious that we don't have to acquire awareness, that it's inborn, that we can't avoid it except by not paying attention. And that's where the dropping in comes in. So taking up residence in the silence for now. noticing whether your awareness is relatively stable or accessible, or whether it's kind of patchy and even inaccessible at times because we get so carried away by the thought stream. And as long as you're aware of that, then of course you're not carried anywhere, because the awareness always supersedes distraction. So the knowing of distraction is pure awareness. So the beauty of this work is that you don't have to actually get better at it. That awareness is awareness, and what we often need is just to give ourselves more easy access to it, more familiarity, more intimacy, more practice of entering into this domain of our humanity. And so if your eyes have been closed, I would invite you to open them. As many of you have heard me say many times, you'll notice that I didn't ring any bells, although I have them right here, and I have nothing against bells, but and sometimes they're ceremoniously really fabulous to intone. But if the real meditation practice really is living our lives as if it really mattered moment by moment by moment, then am I still guiding a meditation here, or have we moved into something else, conversation, talk, and so forth? I'd like for the rest of our time together, which is close to 45 minutes, to actually be mostly dialogue, where we give you, as Soren was saying, the opportunity to say hello, say how you're doing in this, incredible time, what your understanding of practice is, whether you have any questions about it that I might be able to answer or not. And when we engage in the dialogue, I would invite all of you to really listen as if every single person who's asking a question is asking your question. Okay, because you never really know when someone's going to actually say something that you didn't even know you wanted to know, or had no way of framing in that particular way, and all of a sudden it becomes germane, it becomes cogent for you in a new way. The only thing I'll say before we begin that conversation is that the way humanity has been unfolding on this planet, that a lot of assumptions that I even had as a child in my generation, born in my case in 1944, so right in the middle of the Second World War, that the world is changing at a pace that it has never, ever seen before. And it's exponential. It's going exponential, just the way the virus was spreading exponentially. And so the world of my, younger years, in some sense, doesn't exist. And what our children and grandchildren are actually facing in terms of their futures is very different in many, many ways from what my generation was facing. Soren mentioned a lot of it has to do with artificial intelligence and algorithms and, our devices in the digital world, which is also bringing us incredible benefits, like being able to be together like this. And also tinkering with our, biology, with biological engineering, and all sorts of ways that are, it's fine when we kind of can use our biological know-how to um, rapidly develop like incredibly effective vaccines to stop all the death. But you see that even that is not a kind of no-brainer, because a lot of people have great suspicion about even, high degrees of scientific confidence that these vaccines are safe. So we need to continually kind of peel the levels of the onion of our own intelligence down to the core in a certain way, because we can become our own worst enemy. As I was saying, the autoimmune disease of planet Earth is human beings when we don't know ourselves, and when we get attached to a particular kind of wanting things to stay the same or be a different way, or somebody else is getting something and I'm not getting something. And we lose our minds when we most need to get our minds to actually be all we can be, mobilize all the resources in and out of that we have. And that's a distributive function. That's a function for all of us. It's not like some leaders are going to tell us all how to do it, and then we'll just bow down and say, well, thank you. It's way beyond that. Every single one of us is one of the cells of the body politic of planet Earth, so to speak. And so even, at the moment with the conference which just took place, maybe it's still taking place in Edinburgh, the COP26, that's looking at, the warming of the planet and all of the threats that the planet is in. We need mindfulness here. We need wakefulness. We need selflessness in order to really grok what is called for, that will tilt things in the direction of well-being, sanity, and taking things down to a livable level in terms of global planetary temperature. Soren said something about meditation and trees, that, yeah, you don't have to sit in a full lotus posture and pretend you're a statue in some temple or in the British Museum. You can just be in awe of the natural world. Trees, he mentioned, okay? So the green in all vegetation is a porphyrin ring molecule called chlorophyll, which has an atom, magnesium, that's right at the center of this four porphyrin, they're called rings. It's a flat ring structure. And that allowed plants figured out on this earth, long before there was any kind of animal life, how to capture the energy and warmth from the sun and turn it into living structure. And without plants, of course, we'd be dead. So we need that chlorophyll big time, even though we're cutting down the rainforests, which are the lungs of the planet. And it turns out that if you know any biology, that our blood, of course, is red. It's not green, right? But the hemoglobin molecule, the heme that it refers to, is a 4 porphyrin rings with another atom at the center. That atom is iron rather than magnesium, and it actually, I'm sorry, and it actually carries the oxygen. It's evolved to the point where it can carry oxygen to our cells throughout the body, and then give them up and exchange for carbon dioxide. And so these 2 porphyrin ring structures separated by billions of years of evolution. And it's like, it's something, it's jaw-dropping that there's that much unity in some sense in these kind of elemental life processes that somehow have given rise to us, and where the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom are completely, integrated on so many different levels. And that's just one example. And I think of, like, everybody trying to get back to the moon or to other planets, and we're investigating the, space, and a lot of billionaires, several billionaires at least, are attempting to touch space or colonize space or Mars or whatever. But, we can't really colonize other worlds unless we have grown up enough to actually be able to live within our own world. And so to look at the moon, for instance, and imagine how the moon looks at us. There's no life on the moon. There's no consciousness on the moon. But if there were, what would it think of this? It's like almost like the Earth is an egg, and it's a fertilized egg, and it's evolving into something. And the question is, what are we evolving into? And will we actually, sort of be able to transcend our own highly self-destructive and delusional characteristics to actually, have life on this planet? I mean, I was once asked by a television interviewer out of the blue, because we weren't talking about this, but she said to me, Jon, what are your thoughts on life after death? And I said, actually, I'm not that interested in whether there's life after death. What I'm interested in is whether there's life before death. Because in some very real way, unless we wake up, as Soren was describing, and he talked about what the word Buddha actually means, unless we wake up as a species, which is what our species name actually means, the species that is aware and is aware that it's aware, then, looked at from the moon, it's like, we don't know whether this egg is actually going to produce something, or whether it's going to basically just die. And I don't want it to die. I have an investment here. It's far bigger than myself. I mean, I'm invested in the trees. I'm invested in our children. I'm invested in all children, all grandchildren. I'm invested in, the beauty of this world. And part of that investment is awareness of beauty, and also of the profound violence and ignorance and harm and madness. And until we can turn around and face ourselves and our history and inquire deeply about our true nature, the jury is out as to where this whole thing is going. And so every single one of us counts. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, the meditation practice of the moment. It's all hands on deck on planet Earth, not just the people in Glasgow. So that said, I would like to just sort of open it up, and the folks behind the scenes will be able to communicate with you about this. But hi.
Hi, Jon. We got it. Yeah, so thankful to be here, and so just so aware of what you're saying, of the truth of what you're saying, that it's such a challenging time, and that for the world, and when I say the world, I don't mean out there, but me as well, because that greed, that envy, that consumerism, that getting somewhere is in me. And the practice, as I see it, is about getting really still, getting really quiet, and regressing. And I use the word regressing on purpose back to some original place where there isn't this striving, this getting somewhere.
So let's not call it regressing, then why not call it advancing? Or returning.
So, but, and yet, and it's a long process, and it's this really, for me, been a quiet process. I just wonder, there seems to be, but there needs for something to happen. And it just seems that there's something I should be doing, that we should be doing, that I don't grasp with the practice. Does that make any sense? It just seems
totally,
that it's so,
and I would encourage you to keep nurturing that fecundity in yourself, so to speak. For instance, I noticed a thought or a vision moving through my mind as I was sitting here just now. And it was, I've had this repeatedly, it hasn't come to pass yet. And what country are you in, Eduardo? I mean, if you don't
I
mind.
live in Toronto. I'm originally from Mexico, John.
Okay, so because this is going to be U.S. centric, but I was just thinking while we were sitting, imagine thousands of us, hundreds of thousands of us sitting on the mall in Washington, D.C., in front of the Congress, between the Lincoln Memorial and the Congress, or in the next conference after Glasgow. You know, that the 200,000 people sitting in silence is a sight to behold. Gandhi knew that, and not doing anything. That not doing anything is not doing anything. It's a non-doing. It speaks volumes. So the silence itself, when we have very large numbers and are willing to be present, and you don't go away, that can make an appeal to other people that I think has enormous power. And when then that's only the prelude. Then what comes out of that? What is, you know, so there are all sorts of actions that could actually be non-actions in the sense that they would be bearing witness in a certain kind of way, in silence. Gandhi knew this and used it to great effect and brought down the, sort of British Empire and their hold on India. Now, of course, that led to its own forms of enormous, violence. But I think we need to find imaginative, meditative, mindful solutions that actually then transcend into action, into policy, into taking down things like, in our case, Confederate monuments that are like, sort of wounds that are festering, for so many different people, or whatever it is. So it's not about non-action. Okay, it's about letting our doing come out of our being and also out of our imagination. And maybe we're not imagining enough what we're really capable of, given that the house is on fire. And, gradual solutions in a certain way are not really what's called for in this moment. And the beauty of meditation is that you can wake up in this moment. It's not like, well, let me meditate for 25 years or 50 years and then I'll become a Buddha. No, the message of the Buddha was, you're already a Buddha, at least potentially, and all that's required is waking up. And that's something that, rather than idealizing as a final state, there's only one moment in which we can be awake, and is this one. So the more we cultivate wakefulness in this moment to whatever degree we can, then in a sense, you're already in a completely different mode. And when your doing comes out of being, and maybe it will take some time of not knowing before you know what to do. But when you do know, you'll know in a way that's not coming out of here anymore. It's coming out of here. And it may be coming out of a we rather than a me. And, I can't be more specific than that because I'm trying to appeal to like millions of us, or 7 billion of us actually, to wake up. And it's not like there's one prescription for that, but it's a deep trust that what is beautiful in our species outweighs our core tendencies towards selfing and violence when we feel threatened.
Very clear. Yeah, it's not, and it's not indicative of any particular direction, but it provides me with more clarity than I had.
I'm thrilled to hear that, because we need to have these kinds of conversations with each other, as far and wide as we can, because there's no one answer. And this is not about fixing. I mean, working in medicine, mindfulness in medicine is not about fixing. or curing for that matter. It's about healing, which means coming to terms as things as we are. So we can't write off half the people in the world as lunatics and then, create some utopia for the other half. I mean, this is a we engagement, not a me engagement. And it requires stretching our own envelope of not knowing that goes way beyond just the not knowing of cognition. And I love that. It really is a love affair. And so I really appreciate your question, Eduardo, and keep incubating it.
I will. Thank you so much for your answer.
Okay, we have, who's next?
Hi.
Hey. Hi.
Hi.
Dominique.
Yes, lovely to meet you, John. It's a pleasure. Very
Where are you
grateful.
calling from?
Yorkshire, in Huddersfield,
Wonderful.
in England. Yeah, I appreciate that it's possibly American-centric. So I'll just share my viewpoint of my journey, I suppose, where I am right now. I'm very ashamed of what the government are doing in England right now. It's when we was meditating, then I felt a real deep sense of sadness and pain for all what's going on in this world, and people struggling to maybe feel overwhelmed to even start with the climate, the greed, the corruption, and everything else. And I feel it strongly myself. I've been practicing for some years, and your MBSR started me on my lovely journey for mindfulness, so I'm very grateful. Thank you. Now almost a teacher in mindfulness, but I'm also a crisis nurse in the mental health in the NHS. And it's taken me many years to speak to people about mindfulness and hopefully show them the benefits, and through the communication with others. I'm getting there. It's taken me 8 years. I'm just scratching the surface from where I work in my little domain. And I guess that's all I can ever do, is just this little bit right now, moment to moment. Yeah, and I'm growing, and it's taken me 8 years to just even start to scratch the surface with mindfulness. And I still have resistance of getting up in the morning to practice, and sometimes I don't, because other things.
Of course.
Well, it's difficult. Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult.
It's not difficult. It's the hardest thing in the world for us
Yeah.
human beings to do, which is one of the reasons that it's worth practicing.
Yeah, for sure.
Cultivating.
But it's also saved my life in many ways, and it's brought me a lot of joy and compassion to myself. And I've learned to love myself through this journey, which is a real bonus. So I guess that's why I'm so passionate. It's a movement to me. This is a movement.
Yes.
And it's the only way forward for me. And I am starting to become aware in my everyday life, stretching, showering. But it's so easy to go back into the mind. And so I just wanted to share this moment and to say hello to you and thank you from the bottom of my heart for you to allow me to become the person that I am becoming.
Well, Dominic, I am very, very touched and also delighted to hear your Yorkshire accent. And maybe you know the work of David Whyte, also from Yorkshire. Do you know David Whyte, the poet? Whyte. He lives in the US now, but look him up. He wrote a book called The Heart Aroused, which is a very beautiful expression of the kinds of things we're groping for and looking for. And so a wonderful, universalizing of the sort of profound Yorkshire groundedness that I hear in not just your voice, but just the poignancy of what you've shared with us. So in a way, we're all in the same boat. I mean, the boat is called planet Earth, but the fact is, when we start to share, that we all feel like rank beginners, and that you were implying that 8 years is like nothing. Well, 8 years is nothing, but at the same time, it's an infinite number of moments. And as you say, I mean, or at least I read between the lines that in some sense it's saved your life or has given a kind of vector of meaning in your life. And yeah, so it's a lifetime's adventure. It's truly a lifetime's adventure. And every single one of us has a unique way of actually voicing our dilemmas and our fear and also our loves in ways that actually inspire every other one of us. And so I just treasure the fact that we've been able to, touch base in this way. And it's kind of the only thing we can do is pay it forward, So it's not about any one person, but it's about a kind of waking up on a planetary scale and recognizing that who we think we are and the sort of narratives, the story we tell ourselves about our early life and where we're going and what our successes and our failures and our ego involvement, all that narrative is so minuscule compared to your true nature or any of our true nature, that as we learn to actually wake up and let that become our default mode, as I was saying, then the book hasn't been written about what's possible for us human beings to do. And if the time is of some kind of urgency because we've created these problems for ourselves, then we can, in fact, intend and trust that human ingenuity is capable of actually getting out of its own way and doing what needs to be done. And, just speaking of the National Health Service, for instance, you probably know that the NIH in the UK, the NHS in the UK has actually ascribed or prescribed mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for people with multiple experiences of major depressive disorder. So mindfulness has entered into the National Health Service in the UK in ways that have not happened in the US. So every culture and every government, in a sense, has, fresh opportunities to actually expand the envelope of what truly embodied wakefulness would be all about, and how it translates into medicine, for pandemics globally and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you,
honor. It's an honor to be in conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
Jon, next we have Vima Gozari.
Hello.
Hi there, Vima.
Nice to be here again. So here I'm from Turkey, Istanbul. The schools are opened after 18 months of non-schooling. So it's quite a challenging time for children because we see very difficult symptoms with children because they lost contact with the outside world. They were in lockdown and they lost even eye contact. So the schools are a mess. But I wanted to ask you, because I'm quite frustrated with the adults now. They want to go back and they want children to go back, but there's no going back. So we have to move forward. But I'm a clinical psychologist and I want to help children in schools, not in a clinical setting, in their natural setting, in a normal way, because they're reacting to something that was abnormal. So it's normal for them to react. So there's nothing wrong with kids. But people act as if they're all ADHD now. They all have autistic symptoms. And I hate this because children are reacting to something that was quite traumatic. So I just want to ask you, how can we help children after the pandemic? For them, I have trust in children. I have faith in children. So if we just support them and help them, I believe they can get over this and we can move on to something new, not go back to the old system, which was very much wrong in many senses. So do you have anything to say for children?
Yeah, you just answered your own question and very eloquently. You're absolutely right. What we need to do is kind of take this moment as it is and honor the experience that they've been through. And it's very hard to sort of approach it merely through thought because if you take the experience of a 3-year-old in nursery school and compare it with a 6-year-old starting, first grade, and a 10-year-old, and every one of these age groups is having their own experience of the natural arc of their developmental trajectory being in some sense suppressed or squashed or constrained, having to be at home and then with masks and not being able to play with children at a time where play actually shapes the brain, especially in the early years where neuroplasticity is going crazy, because that's how we actually grow and become who we are, is by the brain continually rewiring itself on the basis of lived experience, and especially in children. So just that you bring this up is incredibly important. And what you're saying about Turkey is just as true where I'm living right now, and I'm seeing it with the children and the families that I know, and everywhere. We need to take this into account and really honor that the way we put it in the MBSR clinic, with people with all sorts of chronic conditions, both medical and psychiatric, because it's very easy to get caught up in a diagnosis and then you sort of feel there's something wrong with me. And we say to people, from our point of view, and this is true for the children you're talking about, the 5-year-olds or the 3-year-olds or the 8-year-olds, from our point of view, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong or no matter what you've been through. And so can we begin now, especially if you're back in school and the pandemic is over? And of course, it's been traumatic for everybody. So there's a certain kind of global PTSD associated with COVID. And none of us have like the answer to it. But the more we can be aware of and be sensitive to the challenges that these little people face, and just trying to get back to some degree of social life and trust and being unmasked, and then dealing with their fears or what came up during these 18 months. That requires us as adults, whether we're teachers, whether we're parents, whether, to really be our best selves and not be driven by our own fear. And to be aware of how driven we are by our own fear that, oh, my child is not going to get what they need, or they've been in some sense constrained, or, because these kinds of things happen all the time anyway, that, some children feel excluded from particular kinds of groups within a certain kind of age group or whatever. And then parents always worry about like their developmental, health and well-being. So I think you've, in some sense, you answered your own question. And then the real question is, how do we build it out? How do we live it as opposed to just cognize some solution? And that you live through your being. If you're seeing clients, then no matter what you do and how good a therapist you are, it's your being and your honoring of their being that does most of the work of healing. Okay? You know that, of course, everybody who's a therapist knows that, but often we don't really believe it, or we haven't exercised that muscle of agency in ourselves that goes beyond words, and that embrace is healing. And it helps people to become who they really are, transform, and also recover from the kinds of insults or challenges that they faced, especially after a global pandemic. So my suggestion would be to trust in your own goodness and your own imagination, and in your own meditation practice, if you are exercising that muscle yourself. And I see that you are, because we connected earlier in some completely different context. And that's not just something. It turns out, I would say, that's everything. And then connect with other like-minded people who have the same concerns, whether it's teachers or whether it's therapists or whether it's parents. And then build communities that recognize that we need a transition of accommodation and healing as we move out of this particular phase into whatever is coming next. I completely agree with you. It will not be going back to the way the world was as it was before. There's no going back. And this is, in some sense, a global wake-up call to all of the ways that we are vulnerable, not just in terms of global warming, but global warming affects all sorts of things that happen in biology, including pandemics, including virus spreads and the kind of toxicity of viruses. And COVID is not going to be the last virus we see. And it won't be the last pandemic. And so we have to really begin to learn how to trust in our multiple intelligences, which would include developing molecular biological solutions to these kinds of problems and epidemiological solutions, so that we engage in healing on every level that we can, and preventive medicine in terms of future epidemics. Is that at all helpful?
Thank you. Very much helpful. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
nice to see you again, and best of luck over there. And are you in Istanbul or where are you?
Istanbul. I'm in Istanbul.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah, keep up the one great work. I mean, it's like, that's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Next, we have Tuvi Orbach.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much, or double thank you. First of all, to bring all the mindfulness, to spread it in the world so much. It's thanks to you. So first of all, for this, I also left in the middle of a conference now. I'm calling from London, UK, and I'm trustee of the Scientific Medical Network. We are researching consciousness and collaborate with the Institute of Noetic Science.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
I left the conference in the middle in order to come to see you. And it was worth it, I can tell you. It's the first time that I see you face to face. And the few words that you mentioned in the beginning were so touching. It's exactly what I expecting. It was everything I expecting. So thank you very much for this, first of all. And I would like very much to collaborate with you. I hope that later I can have you email later.
Yeah, we're already collaborating. This is it.
Because I want to help to spread it. I believe you've done a lot of work, but I believe there is another way that you can take it to another level. And
Wonderful.
I would like to collaborate with you. But I've got one simple question, just very short question, but it's very, how do you see all the purpose of this creation of the human being? What is our purpose at the end of the day? I know that a lot of things we are not doing the right things. I'm aware, and I'm sure that awareness and mindfulness is very helpful. But what is behind this? How do you see the purpose of all this creation of humanity? What is our purpose here?
Well, let me ask you, whose purpose?
Okay, if you ask me, I believe you are part of a big consciousness. There is one consciousness that we are part of it. So each one of us is another point of view of the one consciousness. And all this creation is part of this consciousness. That's my view.
Yes.
And all the creation, I can see it as part of the evolution of not just of the physical evolution of consciousnness.
Yeah, from at least the time of the Big Bang, right?
I'm not sure it's a Big Bang in the beginning, okay? That's, because
no, it could be bang, 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 bang,
yes,
right?
The sun doesn't know what was before the 14 billion years.
Okay, but you see, I love this, and we could spend hours talking about it, Tuvi, yes, because you're asking very, very profound questions about the nature of life, the nature of being, the nature of
what we are, and certainly what we are.
Yeah, what does it mean, so to speak, if we can use the word meaning, to be human, or to be alive at this time, or to be
exactly.
And so I love that. And there are, of course, like enormous, sort of conversations in the philosophical world about just this, and have been going on forever. And, there are questions about panpsychism and whether consciousness is the real, sort of stuff of the universe, and matter is secondary. And what's the relationship of mind and matter?
Yes.
And so all of this is very wonderful and seductive, and can be possibly liberating and giving us new visions for how to move forward. at the same time, there's a certain kind of risk that is associated with these kinds of questions, because you can go round and round in them forever and not realize that you're in a dimension of thought. So you're in some sense still in thought, and there's a whole other dimension, a really different dimension from thought, which is awareness itself. So we have to ask practical questions about how much our thinking is actually contributing to some larger meaning in the world, or whether it's kind of just an argumentative way of explaining things so we'll feel less anxious perhaps, or more at home, but where we're not necessarily bringing it out into the world to reduce suffering. And
Yes.
so there's a certain way in which I would say, I myself don't tend to go in that direction too much, because right now the world is so much on fire that asking these ultimate questions, we can do that on the side as we put the fires out. But I think we
Yes.
need more awareness to balance out all our pyrotechnical thinking, which people do at levels that are far beyond anything I've ever managed to taste in my own brain, so to speak.
So thank you, and I hope that we can find your email or something, can be in touch with you. I really
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate what you're saying, Tuvi, and keep up the one, as I said before, keep up the one great work. Your love of it in the way you formulated it, that's not second to anything else. So the world, as I sometimes say metaphorically, the world needs all its flowers in order to really blossom fully. And so your instincts around this kind of thing can be incredibly valuable if you can, in some sense, find a way to connect those questions and those thoughts with the nature of mind that transcends thought. Pure
Definitely.
awareness.
Thank you.
Jon, we have about 10 minutes remaining, and
Yeah, I see
Tracy
that.
K is next.
Hey. Oh, I'm so excited. First of all, I have to fangirl for a second and say, for 30 years, if I'm not dating us too much, for 30 years, I've been reading Full Catastrophe Living over and over and listening to your tapes, and it's made a big difference in my life. I've given that book and your voice on many different medium, going back to tapes, to so many people who've been in pain, including myself. And because of you, I've been practicing meditation for 30 years.
Stop there for a second, Tracy. I just want to drink that in. And not just your voice, but your face, and you're standing there in your kitchen. It's incredibly moving to encounter you in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I've known you for all this time because I listened to your soothing voice.
Yeah.
Since I was in the hospital when I was 24. And one of the nurses told me that there was this guy in Massachusetts that had this program that was working really well with cardiac patients, and that they had, like, you know, dating myself a lot, but they had like closed circuit TV with your meditations on it.
Yeah.
And so I managed to find it, and it was not like something that other people were doing, but it's just been so meaningful to me. And
you're talking about the world of relaxation, right?
Yes. And like the body scan, I've been doing that body scan for, more years than I haven't. But
well, it's an honor for me to meet you, and just a privilege, because of course we haven't known each other until this moment, but we've known each other in the ways you're describing for a very long time, for decades, and it's had some kind of profound effect on your life, obviously.
Yes.
So that's really important, and it's important not just for you and me, but because other people, we're all living in the same space of possibility where we touch each other in ways that are, profoundly non-trivial.
That's right.
So thank you just for sharing that. It's nice to encounter you, even not in person, but kind of.
Thank you, me too. And I've always sort of dreamed of going to one of your in-person seminars and hoped that I would have a chance to tell you that. So I'm just so privileged to be here today. And so despite the fact that I've been doing this for 30 years and now, sort of added many other types of meditation, I always still feel like a beginner. And I always feel like I'm drifting off, and I catch the thoughts, and I know that's all part of it and everything. But I'm wondering, do you ever get to a point where you feel like instead of hearing 15 conversations in your head at once, do you ever get down to just one, and then you can just be in the space, or is that just enlightenment?
No, you can throw out the E word to a first approximation. Probably a wise thing to just throw out the E word. You've heard me say in the guided meditation piece that it's really not trying to get anywhere else or to achieve some kind of special state, whether you want to call it enlightened or even wakefulness or whatever, because we reify those states, we turn them into some kind of construct, and then we idealize it, and then we're not good enough. This moment's not good enough. We have to get to that moment, then we'll be a real meditator. And so, I don't actually believe that you haven't had an infinite number of moments already that have just been what they've been, and you've recognized them as such. It may be that you just haven't given yourself permission to actually take another step back and recognize that what I just said might be the case. And it could happen for brief moments, very brief moments where there is no more distraction, where it's not like the thoughts aren't there, but they are not carrying you anywhere else. Maybe for even a fraction of an in-breath, where you're just here. And then maybe the next piece of the same in-breath, it still continues, or maybe not, but you don't take it personally. So then there's this moment, because they're really timeless moments. And in that sense, we're not looking for perfection. We're actually recognizing being or wakefulness that's already here. So it's not like you can improve on yourself. You can't possibly improve on yourself. And it's not about becoming a good meditator or a good body scanner or anything like that. It's remembering who you are underneath thinking. And so that's why I said at the beginning, there's no place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. And you have to take those arrows and where they're pointing very, very seriously, because if you do take it seriously, then you'll realize you're already okay, 100% okay. And for that moment that you realize it and you're not just telling yourself a story, you're okay. And then there's the next moment. And so can you actually string these moments together in a playful, non-striving way and see what happens? So although you've been practicing for 30 years and you might say, oh, I'm just a rank beginner, don't ever abandon that rank beginner's mind. The beginner's mind is, as Suzuki Roshi said, in the expert's mind, there are few possibilities. In the beginner's mind, there are many. So it's trustworthy.
Love that.
Does that make any sense to you, or is kind of?
Yeah.
I want it to be useful in the way a crowbar is useful, like that you put it on some kind of leverage point and you just crank it, and then metaphorically speaking, weights that have been obstacles just fall away, and they're not obstacles anymore, and they never really were obstacles.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love, I forgot about that saying, somebody else, or maybe you mentioned it earlier, if you're here, there's more right with you than wrong with you.
Yeah.
I say that to myself, like whenever I'm beating myself up that I'm having too many conversations during a meditation. Like just showing
Well,
up.
who's the you that knows that you're having too many conversations? You see that awareness. I'm having too many conversations in my meditation practice. So who's that? So listen to that. And you realize that's just another thought. So who's knowing that? Who knows that that's another thought among all these too many conversations? That's awareness. It's not an I, me, or mine kind of awareness. It's just a knowing. It's a direct, more than conceptual knowing. And it's already obvious. So in that sense, like, you don't need to create anything out of your meditation practice. Hope that's been helpful.
So much. Thank you so much. And it was so wonderful just to speak to you for a couple of minutes.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Long Beach, New York.
Great. Keep up the one great work, as I've been saying.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you to all of you. I wish we had more time to go back and forth in this way, but I'm going to have to say goodbye for now, and just wish you all well and encourage us all, including myself, which I intend to be part of the rest of everything that's being offered in this wonderful Global Mindfulness Summit, because it's just an incredible offering. And so, Soren, back to you, and thank you for
Thank you so much,
the
Jon.
invitation to participate.